When you buy a laundromat, the transaction is definitive. You hand over the capital, the machines spin, the quarters drop, the utility is yours to command. You assume the economics of owning a medical waste company function with that same linear simplicity. That is a fundamental error. Owning a medical waste disposal business is not the acquisition of a predictable, essential service asset. It is the voluntary assumption of an engineered, multi-generational liability. A machine designed to transfer every regulatory, environmental, and human health risk onto your personal balance sheet, while hospitals, clinics, and regulators sleep soundly. You are not buying a business. You are entering a high-friction, biohazard containment environment where every single cost variable, every permit, every employee, and every red bag is stacked against permanent solvency. Let us begin with the entry cost, the price of the fantasy itself. The average independent medical waste hauler or treatment facility in the United States changes hands for somewhere between $800,000 and $4.5 million, depending on route density and treatment capacity. That figure includes a handful of specialized box trucks, a small autoclave or incinerator lease, customer contracts, and the first 6 months of operating capital. Brokers will show you trailing 12-month EBITDA of 18 to 25% and call it recession-proof. Healthcare never stops producing waste, they say. Recurring revenue, high barriers to entry, beautiful spreadsheet. Here is what the CIM does not tell you. That number is the minimum viable threshold, not the realistic cost of ownership. The trucks are not ordinary box trucks. They are DOT spec, placarded, secondary containment vehicles that require annual hydrostatic testing, specialized insurance, and drivers with hazmat endorsements. A single new unit runs $180,000 to $260,000. Used ones carry unknown contamination histories. The treatment equipment, autoclaves, microwave systems, or small incinerators, is not a capital asset. It is a regulatory hostage. Validation protocols, stack testing, continuous emissions monitoring, and annual recertification routinely exceed $40,000 to $75,000 per year before you process a single pound. And if your incinerator fails a stack test, you are offline immediately. No revenue, full, fixed cost burn. But the real entry cost is not equipment. It is the invisible assumption of cradle-to-grave liability under the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. From the moment a red bag or sharps container leaves a doctor's office and enters your custody, you own that waste forever. Not until you hand it to a disposal facility. Forever. EPA, OSHA, DOT, state environmental agencies, local air quality boards, all have concurrent jurisdiction. A single missing manifest, a temperature excursion in an autoclave, a driver who forgets to placard, or a pinhole leak in a secondary container can trigger daily fines starting at $70,000 per violation per day. There is no warning. There is only the notice of violation and the demand for immediate corrective action plus civil penalties. You will be told that compliance is just paperwork. It is not. Compliance is a permanent operating system that consumes 12 to 18% of gross revenue in dedicated staff, software, third-party audits, and legal retainers. Every load requires a multi-part tracking document that must be retained for 3 years minimum, often longer under state rules. Every employee who touches a container must complete bloodborne pathogen training, respirator fit testing, and hazmat awareness, renewed annually. Turnover in this industry runs 40 to 60% because the work is disgusting, dangerous, and low status. Every new hire restarts the training clock and the workers' compensation exposure. And then there is the insurance. General liability is irrelevant. You need pollution legal liability, professional liability for waste characterization errors, and excess coverage that actually responds to sudden and accidental releases. Premiums for a mid-sized operator routinely exceed $150,000 to $300,000 annually, and the carrier can non-renew you after a single claim. When that happens, you are uninsurable, and uninsurable medical waste companies do not operate. They liquidate under regulatory supervision. Labor is not your largest cost. Liability attached to labor is. Drivers and technicians earn $22 to $32 per hour on paper. Fully loaded, with overtime because routes always run long, workers' comp because one needle stick or back injury and your mod rate explodes, and the constant recruiting tax, you are looking at $38 to $48 per productive hour. You cannot automate the core function. Someone still has to wheel the carts out of the basement of a surgery center at 5 a.m., lift 40-pound sharps containers, and not spill anything. Self-service kiosks do not exist for chemotherapy waste. The inventory problem is worse than perishable food. Medical waste has no shelf life in the commercial sense, but it has a regulatory clock. Untreated waste cannot sit on your dock beyond permitted holding times, usually 7 to 30 days, depending on jurisdiction and waste type. Miss the window, and you are in violation. Overload your autoclave to catch up, and you fail validation. Fail validation, and every load you processed since the last successful test is potentially non-compliant. Retroactive liability. Then come the treatment economics. Autoclaves are marketed as the clean, modern solution. In reality, they are steam pressure bombs that require constant maintenance, deionized water systems, and biological indicator testing. Incinerators, still required for pathological and chemotherapy waste in many states, are capital and political nightmares. New permits are nearly impossible. Existing ones are under continuous citizen and NGO attack. One odor complaint or visible plume, and you are in a public hearing with your operating certificate on the table. Fuel, landfill or incinerator tip fees, and container costs move only one direction: up. Hospitals negotiate hard because they know you cannot easily walk away from a dense urban route. Your largest customers become your largest concentration risk. Lose 2 hospital systems and your fixed cost structure collapses overnight. The customer contract looks beautiful. Multi-year, automatic renewal. Price escalation clauses. Read the indemnification language. Almost every hospital and clinic contract requires you to indemnify them for any future environmental claim arising from waste you transported, even if the release occurs years later at a third-party disposal site. You have just signed a perpetual put option on your net worth. And because of Cradle-to-Grave, you remain on the hook even if you sell the company. Buyers know this. Sophisticated acquirers will demand escrow holdbacks, environmental insurance, and personal guarantees that survive the transaction. The exit you were sold is often just a delayed personal bankruptcy. Consider a real composite of several operators who looked perfect on paper in 2021 to 2023. $2.1 million purchase price, $480,000 EBITDA, 22% margins, 12 trucks, 2 autoclaves, solid hospital contracts. 18 months later, a single driver left a container unsecured on a loading dock overnight. Rainwater intrusion. Suspected Category A waste cross-contamination. State inspectors arrived, facility locked down. All treated waste for the previous 45 days, quarantined pending retesting. Cash flow stopped. Payroll continued. Insurance reserved the claim and non-renewed. The owner injected another $600,000 of personal capital to stay alive. By month 27, the company was in receivership. The owner still carries personal liability for 3 Superfund-adjacent cleanup actions and 2 worker exposure suits. The recession-proof asset destroyed 3 times its original equity. This is not an outlier. It is the base case once you model the tail risks that never appear in the broker's deck. Let us model it cleanly. Optimistic scenario. Top decile operator. Perfect compliance history. Dense urban routes. Owned treatment capacity. No incidents. 3.2 million annual revenue. Direct disposal and transport costs, 38%. Labor, fully loaded, 29%. Insurance, compliance and maintenance, 14%. After debt service on the acquisition and equipment, owner discretionary cash flow, $280,000 to $340,000. A decent living, if you never sleep and accept that one phone call can erase it. Realistic scenario. The median independent. Same revenue collapses to 2.4 million after 2 contract losses and route density erosion. Disposal costs spike to 44% on fuel and tip fee inflation. Labor hits 34% on turnover and overtime. A moderate compliance event costs $180,000 in fines, legal, and downtime. Insurance renews at plus 60%. Owner take-home, under $90,000 while working 70-hour weeks and personally guaranteeing everything. Hourly rate below a hospital environmental services manager, with unlimited personal downside. This is not a business. It is a highly regulated, biohazard-exposed job that you bought the privilege of performing under perpetual federal and state surveillance. The essential service moat is real. So is the fact that the moat is filled with sharps, chemotherapy residue, and cradle-to-grave liability that never leaves your name. If you want more elite insights like this, like the video, share it with others, and subscribe for powerful, high-level content consistently.